Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Sateliot is the first satellite operator to offer IoT, or Internet of Things connectivity, over standard 5G narrow band IoT. Their constellation serves as cell towers in space, expanding mobile operator coverage and providing global connectivity to unmodified commercial terrestrial devices wherever they may be. My guest is Gianluca Redolfi, Chief Commercial Officer of Sateliot. And Gianluca, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. Let's first of all start talking about what is IoT and why is that important? That's one of those phrases that gets thrown around a lot about Internet of Things.
Devices and phones, they will say, okay, I know it. If you say Internet of Things, they will say, what's this? Okay. Well, there's something that is quite human, and we always been looking for it. We like to measure things. Mm-hmm. We started want to measure distances. We wanted to measure time. It took a lot of time historically to measure time, and we are measuring more and more and more with the internet. We are more and more able to measure different things, and it happened in our own homes. We want to measure the temperature. We want to measure other things on ourselves. We want to measure our own, again, temperature, how many steps we do, how many stairs we're doing, and so on. So we want to measure many things. We want to measure the location of our car. We want to measure the speed which is moving. So that's all. This is Internet of Things. We have sensors that are measuring more and more and more, even where we don't think they exist. We would like to know if the garbage bin of this street is empty or not. So we need to go there to clean it. We want to know if the lights that are on the streets are working or not, because maybe we need to go there and repair it. The same for the traffic light, and so there are sensors everywhere.
Right.
And this is what we could call Internet of Things. It's a little bit different than machine to machine. Machine to machine is when it goes one to one. This is typically quite massive. It's just information that goes back from sensors. They can be on multiple aspects, and then there's a kind of intelligence behind that takes actions based on that. I'll give you a few examples.
Okay.
Much more practical, maybe. Let's say I have a field of crops, agriculture, and I can do it as we do it in since forever. Okay, or I can have sensors measuring, for instance, how much sun did I have today, this week, this month. What's the temperature at different levels, at 1 meter, 50 centimeter, at the soil level, minus 50 centimeters, and so on. What's the moisture, what's the humidity in the air, and so on. And based on all this information, I can have a prediction of how good would be my crop. Mm-hmm. Do I need to put more water in? Do I need to put less? Do I need to spray something? Okay, and this is already happening. What we are providing from satellite is the extension of the current coverage. Because in many cases, these use cases, they don't have any type of connectivity. So you could put the sensor, but if you cannot basically retrieve the information, well, you cannot do that much with that. Okay, right. And that's the issue we are solving from the satellite perspective.
So then how is Sateliot unique in this industry?
So satellite has been around since, the
1958 or 1959.
Yeah. End of the, operationally in the 60s, and then some others even before in the 50s. We know the first one was the Sputnik. That didn't last that much, but was the first one. Everybody knows the name. But commercially, probably around it started in the 70s to be quite useful for widely useful in the world, and then everybody being seen, and maybe TV from satellite starting late 80s and 90s, and then telecommunication, the broadband, and so on. But it's something that is always associated in the mind of everybody with satellite. It's too expensive.
Mhm.
Okay, you need to buy a big equipment, you need to put a big antenna, and it's expensive. And it's not for any use case. So you could be any on a sea platform where you have this extraction of oil. Maybe you can afford to put a big antenna and pay a lot of money because there's a reason to it. But if you want to put it every 300, 400, 500 meters on a field of crops, like my example, well, you cannot afford it. So the solution we bring in is very different because it's not our own solution. It's based on a standard.
Right.
Okay. And what does it mean? That the same cellular device that is normally used on IoT, the sensor we were discussing just before, they can now connect to satellite. They don't need a special antenna. They don't need to be a special device. Okay, that's a revolution that the standard brings to the world and to the future. So it's a change in paradigm, or what we can call it's a disruption. No? That's another name for it. And basically, when you have the cost of the device 100 times less, and the cost of the connectivity of the modes maybe 10 times less, well, you're in a completely different position. So for many use cases or applications, it becomes viable financially to use it. And that's the big change. Okay, Sateliot has been promoting and pushing and been the biggest contributor for the standard that is now quite widely known as NTN, so the release 17 of 3GPP. Okay, it's very technical, but it's the association around the world that sets the standard for telecommunications. And they have different releases. So the latest one is the 17. That includes also the NTN, non-terrestrial network, as extension of the terrestrial network. Okay. And so we're launching the first constellation of satellites that can provide 5G from space.
Why did your company decide to go in the direction of utilizing space resources?
Oh, I think it's across everything. It's very tough. If you're an entrepreneur, it's very tough to find something that is not been done yet in the telecommunication and on Earth. Okay,
right.
So and then we saw the gap of the satellite. There's an industry that has not been disrupted, still with the same players, the same pricing, the same oligopoly from the late 90s. Something that also contributed a lot has been this new space. So basically launching, mainly thanks to SpaceX, has been the initiator. Like for a smartphone, it has been the Apple iPhone. For SpaceX is the one that's been moving and shaking the world on launching satellites at a very reasonable price. That would enable many companies to go to space that would be prohibited before. So when you put it all together, and then you know a lot about telecommunications. So we are here 6 partners, and we know a lot about telecommunication. Probably we have altogether more than 100 years of experience, for good and for bad. We have a lot of years behind us, and so we say, I think there's an opportunity in the market that we can and we can do a solution. We can make a viable solution, and this has to go through the standard. So that's why we been part of the standard of the 3GPP Association, and here we are.
And there you are. Gianluca, tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into the field.
Well, look, all right. I've been working telecommunication for many years. Okay, at the beginning, I had my own few startups where I learned a lot. I've been working in consulting, specifically on telecommunication, on management consulting with big companies, America and North America. But So it's extremely interesting. I've been working as CCO in a big telecom operator, learning a lot as well. But always had my entrepreneurial spirit, and that's what my contribution to Sateliot. Yeah, I think that's the I always like to have progression, and when you see basically that you can do something for the people around you, it can be just a small team or large team, or even for to have a global impact, is very nice. And actually, that's what the satellite from space brings. Whenever we think about a global impact now, we think more about internet probably and an app and something. But as an infrastructure in space, you typically have a global impact because if you can bring this with a global coverage, and that's what I liked a lot.
What about the team that you're working with there? How many people are there? What kind of expertise do they have?
Oh, well, so we start, of course, we were like, few people as any startup, and we are over 50 now. Well, all type of expertise. So you have a key core of technical expertise. You know, when you are a satellite company, but at the same time you're a telecom operator, so you need to have at least two type of key expertise in the company, which are the core telecom competencies, and then the satellite one, the space one. Okay, so it's like two companies in one. Of course, you have operations and you have a team in the commercial areas.
Do the customers that use your service require any kind of specialized equipment? To take me kind of through that customer experience for using Sateliot.
Well, look, so that's one of the key things, because if you are already on the IoT and you're providing IoT services, you would not require anything.
Okay.
You can take your device with the release 17, which is the new release. So if it's not, you might be needing to upgrade what you have, or if you buy the new one, buy the new ones like a new iPhone, or you upgrade your iPhone. That's exactly the same. And basically you're done. You don't need to have anything else, and you can connect to us. So that's it's tapping into an existing extremely large ecosystem. There are no barriers, basically.
I'm talking with Gianluca Redolfi, Chief Commercial Officer of Sateliot, on the Terra podcast. Take a moment right now to click on subscribe to be sure you don't miss any of the podcasts, or if you're watching on YouTube, any of the videos from Terra, the Journal of Space Commerce. Now, most market research shows that there's a healthy growth in the IoT industry over the remainder of the decade. So how sensitive is the IoT market to the economy, which, depending on where you are, is, I don't want to say it's not great, but we are having some issues. In your opinion, how sensitive is IoT to those market conditions?
Well, there's a big relevance because the more digitalized you are, the more you can help the increase of the GDP of a country in general. And digitalization requires many things, but among them, one of the key one is connectivity. So allowing to have IoT and the connectivity to make IoT working, it's a key one. Okay, and we are seeing it in many countries that are digitalized and are increasing the digitalization. And actually, connectivity by satellite at very inexpensive costs for countries that are very extended, where of course connectivity cannot reach all the areas, is a key driver to increase the GDP.
You know, you talked about agriculture, and I just wondered what other kinds of applications there are for IoT in general and for Sateliot in particular.
Well, so for the use cases that are looking to have satellite connectivity, there are many. Agriculture is one of them. I would say that anything which is the follow-up and management of the cattle and all the type of animals is extremely important, a very large market, including wildlife, and that it looks secondary, but it's a lot because, of course, most of these animals they're living outside the covered areas. But more specifically, one key one is logistic. More and more, we want to follow. More and more, actually, the world is global, international. So we want to follow what's happening. Are you producing in China or in Poland or in Italy, and then you export it to the US or to LATAM and so on. Where is the packet that I bought, or the pallet, or the container, and then we want to track more and more. Traceability as a lot of value now. Is really what I'm buying, what they're telling me. So the end-to-end follow-up of the chain is extremely important. Are the cold chain, has the cold chain been broken? Can I follow up what happened doing constantly doing this? So all these use cases are key ones, and are key use cases that are really existing. I can tell you others that are still not there because basically they are it's too expensive. If you are on a boat and you fell out of the boat now, even if you have your life jacket, they will try to find you as we used to do 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
If your life jacket will have a $5, $3, $2 equipment, I don't see a big issue to have it on every life jacket over the next 5 years.
Right.
We'll locate you exactly at the meter. Okay, so this is one of the example where you say, okay, oh, that's very interesting. Yes, it's very interesting. It's very interesting, and it's very surprising that the technology is not really going after helping human lives just because it's too expensive.
So it becomes like what we call an EPIRB, which is an emergency location device. I know that every airplane has to have an EPIRB device, which now is mostly satellite based, but you're saying this could be done much more perhaps inexpensively and more quickly by using the Internet of Things and a company like Sateliot.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we don't provide the final service, but we provide the connectivity. So if the device that can connect to our satellites costs a few dollars, and the service costs maybe a small subscription or even no subscription, you can save lives. You could have sensors in the mountain and avoid avalanches, but now it's too expensive because nobody's doing it, or basically it's very limited. So the new use cases that can come up are basically unlimited. There are a lot of them.
Do you have any things like individual use cases? Because you keep talking about the new iPhone, which I got mine, and what is the advantage to having the Internet of Things that I'm able to connect with my iPhone on a personal level?
Well, if you have your iPhone and you have connectivity, you can. I mean, it depends on the definition of the IoT. Internet of Things, typically there are things that we say that they don't have a screen. Okay, so maybe your iWatch will not be an Internet of Thing, but it depends on the definition. But if you have in other things connected to your iPhone, Internet of Things, I mean, it depends on what you want to measure. You have more and more things that are connected to measure your cardio, to measure your temperature. You have so many that you can put on you that depending on how much you want to measure it, you can do it. And but typically what was the first revolution actually, I can tell you at the beginning when we had this vision and we were talking all the time about, well, we can have connectivity everywhere and so on. Well, I mean, we're not heard that much. We're seen like quite crazy. But now, since the announcement of the iPhone in September of 2022, like it happened probably with the iPhone, the first iPhone. The world changed because they demonstrated it works. They demonstrated that it's a reality and that they don't need to have a huge antenna to connect to the satellites.
Mhm.
The solution iPhone of the Apple is proprietary, so it doesn't work with anything else. Okay, different than what we have and what the standard is. But you open the eyes to everybody that this is possible. Okay, and again, here we are.
Here we are. Tell me
Here
a
we
little
are.
bit about your collaboration with Amazon Web Services and the advantages that brings for your customers.
Well, so AWS is a partner, and we are on the core side. We are working together to make as flexible as possible our telecom infrastructure. Okay, so that's what we do, and of course, the advantages are few of them. First of all, of course, it's very flexible in the development. Cost is quite limited, and which is quite important, is very scalable. So they are the things that made us looking at the AWS, which is basically the leader, as we know, in cloud solutions.
So Sateliot looks like it's trying to make IoT ubiquitous over the entire planet. So do you feel like that can be realistically achieved, and do you have a timeline for that?
Yes, we of course we are pretty sure that it's very achievable. And I tell you more. If we would be a company with a proprietary solution, you could argue, are those guys wise enough to make it happen?
Mm.
But when there's a standard where basically everybody has been contributing around the world, the key companies are part of the 3GPP and they've been contributing. So you can go to the big companies of microchips like Qualcomm, MediaTek, and others, but you also have Samsung, Sony. You have a long list of big companies that are contributing to this, like we did. And it takes 3 years.
Mhm.
I can tell you, everything has been studied. It's very feasible. So this is going to happen, and it's happening. And our timeline again is to be before the end of next year to make it possible to the people to connect to satellite.
How many satellites does that take? Tell me a little bit about your constellation.
Look, we're going to start our commercial service with 4 satellites.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and which already gives coverage around the globe, but not constant coverage. So to go to constant coverage, almost real time, we're gonna be at 250 satellites. It is going to be by the end of 25. That's our timeline.
We're just about out of time, but we do this for all of our guests, and we ask them to look out over the next 10 to 15 years in the world of space commerce and your company's role in it, and tell me what you see.
Well, specifically on IoT and satellite in general, basically, it's a revolution because when the standard gets in, it takes it all. Okay, so it's gonna be big part from us and maybe some other company that they're gonna jump into the standard as well. And so I'm seeing the all space companies disappearing whenever they are not moving into a standard
Mm-hmm.
solution, and more and more availability of data around the world. Just to finish this, I mean, our lemma is a very simple one. We say a connected world is a better world,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what we see.
But when you talk about companies that don't operate on a standard and are proprietary, then you start to think about companies like, I don't know, Starlink, which is a proprietary internet service. How does the Internet of Things kind of tie in with that kind of a proprietary satellite internet company?
Well, look, Starlink is proprietary. It's broadband. Okay, so it's not really typically used for IoT, or especially not for massive IoT. Because massive IoT are small battery-based small devices. This is more to connect a PC or a full set of appliances that connect to internet. So it's another solution. It's not standard, but they achieved the economy of scale because it's Starlink. Okay, so they found their own place.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are a company, satellite company selling satellite phones that are super expensive, and the monthly subscription is super expensive, and you need to carry two phones, one for the cellular and one for the satellite, because maybe you spend part of your time on an oil platform, or you go on the desert and so on. What would happen if your iPhone could connect everywhere?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe you're not going to buy anymore the expensive satellite phone.
You think?
So that's what I'm referring to. I mean, this standard is getting in. As everything is going to take some time to be everywhere in the hands of everybody. Sorry, but it's gonna happen, and that's the revolution scene.
So is it also going to be compatible with things like voice over IP and be able to actually make a satellite phone call from your iPhone from anywhere on the planet?
Well, there are different levels of the standard. Okay, we are focused on the NTN Narrow Band-IoT. That is a message-based system. There are solutions that can compress voice messages into these messages. Okay, so it could allow us to send compressed voice messages. And then you also have on the standard the new radio, which is broadband, okay, or near broadband, that could tap into having maybe a few megabit on the phone from satellite.
It's fascinating stuff, and it's all moving so fast that I'm sure we'll have you back on at some point to tell us about all the new stuff, because it is a very rapidly developing field.
Indeed.
Gianluca, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It's been a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, thanks for you for having me. And we speak soon. Thank you very much.
Gianluca Redolfi is Chief Commercial Officer for Sateliot. And that's going to do it for this edition of the Xterra podcast. You can subscribe to the audio version of the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Audible, and many other popular podcasting platforms. Be sure to click on subscribe so you don't miss an episode of the podcast or any of our other videos. You can also get daily updates on space commerce by following the Journal of Space Commerce on Substack. And one thing more, be sure to connect with us on LinkedIn and follow us on X at XterraJSC. Until next time, I'm Tom Patton. Thanks for joining us.
I wanna go faster, hands in the air, we're gonna crash, searching for the answers, my Galileo through his looking glass, thirst for reason, our dreamer's eyes we gaze into, a sense of purpose known by few, like finding water on the moon.